A small Navy hatchback sits locked in a company park in a provincial Japanese city. Nothing inside is broken. By every ordinary measure, it is a car whose owner stepped away for a moment and is coming back. 4 things about it are wrong. It is parked crookedly, across the painted lines of a bay it would have fitted perfectly. The driver's seat has been slid back past the position its owner needed to reach the pedals. The stereo is switched off, and it should not be, because it came on by itself every time the engine turned over. And in a car belonging to someone who did not smoke, there is a single cigarette butt. The owner was a 24-year-old magazine reporter named Noriko Tsujide. She walked out of her office the night before, and no one has seen her since. But the part of this case almost nobody outside Japan knows is not about the car at all. It is about what the police did next, and about a videotape they made themselves to prove that they had done nothing wrong.
Ise is a shrine town on the eastern coast of the Kii Peninsula, a couple of hours south of Nagoya. The prefecture around it is mountains, fishing ports, and small farming valleys. Noriko Tsujide was not a national newspaper correspondent. She had finished a law degree in Kyoto in 1997 and gone to work for a small regional publisher, filling a magazine named after the region itself: shrines, food, festivals, the ordinary texture of life in a quiet part of the country. She was 24, lived at home with her parents and her grandfather, and drove to work. She had spent the 3rd week of that November abroad, reporting from a refugee camp on the Thai-Myanmar border, and flew back on the 23rd. The next day was her first back in the office, and colleagues who sat beside her noticed nothing unusual at all. Through the afternoon, she took several phone calls from a man she had first met through her work, someone she had written a feature about earlier that year. One of those calls came through immediately before she left. At around 11 at night, her supervisor told her it was late and she should go home. She got up and went out. That is the last confirmed sighting of her. It was cold, and she left her down jacket behind, the kind of detail that means either she expected to be back in minutes or she was not thinking about the cold at all. She never arrived home. Her car was found the following day, a kilometer from her workplace, in the car park of an insurance company branch office. A navy blue Nissan March, registered to her. Doors locked. No struggle inside, nothing ransacked, no damage. Her shoulder bag was gone, and with it her wallet, her notebook, and her mobile phone. Her father later sat in that car, in the seat as it had been left, and what he described was the plain physical fact of it. The seat had been set for somebody bigger than his daughter, and the stereo did not switch itself off. At some point after the engine last ran, a hand reached over and turned it off. Individually, any one of those details could be explained away. Together, they describe something fairly specific. Someone larger than Noriko Tsujide sat in her driver's seat, drove her car to that car park, parked it carelessly, and left it locked. That person smoked. That is the entire physical evidence base of this case. In 27 years, not one withdrawal has ever been made from her bank account. The description the police still circulate is of a young woman in 1998, 161 centimeters, 46 kilograms, a burn scar at the base of her left ring finger, a beige turtleneck, black trousers, orange trainers, a dark green shoulder bag. Here is where the case turns, and it turns badly. When her family reported her missing, Mie Prefectural Police processed the report through the Community Safety Division as a runaway adult. In Japanese,
Iedenin. It is the category for a grown woman who has chosen to walk out of her own life, and it carries no assumption that a crime has occurred. Her parents asked the police to treat it as a possible crime. That request was declined. A non-public investigation began roughly a month later, but a public appeal, flyers, media coverage, and open request for information did not begin until September of 1999, 10 months after she vanished. It is worth being concrete about what that costs. Witnesses who saw a car parked strangely on a November night will not still have that night sorted from any other by the following autumn. Security footage is long overwritten. Almost everything a public appeal is designed to recover has already decayed past use. In the meantime, her parents did it themselves. They printed her photograph and handed it to her friends, to the places she used to go, to the people she had interviewed. And they learned to use a computer so they could reach the people their daughter had been writing to online. When the investigation did begin, it focused on one person, the man who had been calling her office that day, the last known person to have been in contact with her. He has to be described carefully, and the reason will become clear. He was tried, he was acquitted, the acquittal is final, and he is alive, so he will not be named, and no detail specific enough to identify him will be given. For 9 days at the end of January, officers collected him from his house at around 8 in the morning, questioned him until close to midnight, and returned him home between 1 and 2. In law, it was voluntary. In practice, that word is doing a great deal of work. He first said he had not seen her since the summer. Then he acknowledged meeting her at around 11 on the night she disappeared, that they talked in his car for an hour or two, and that he dropped her at the roadside a short distance away. Nothing has ever corroborated that account, and nothing has ever contradicted it. Then something else happened. A criminal complaint was filed against him for unlawful confinement over an alleged incident in Tokyo 14 months earlier in a different city involving a different woman entirely. It was filed 5 days before he was arrested on it. He was arrested in February and indicted in March and held not in a prison but in a cell at Tsu police station under a system called Daiyo Kangoku, substitute prison, where a suspect is kept in police custody rather than a detention center run by a separate agency. He stayed there about 4.5 months after being indicted, and throughout that time he continued to be questioned about the disappearance. Japanese legal commentary has a name for this pattern, Bikken Taiho, roughly collateral arrest, charging someone with a side offense in order to hold them and interrogate them about a different case that cannot be charged. There is no clean equivalent in Anglo-American practice. At trial, he pleaded not guilty, and his defense took the confinement case apart with his own photographs of the complainant's flat, an audio recording that did not fit a confinement scenario, and the complainant's work ledger showing she had been out working at the time. In October of 1999, he was acquitted, the court finding her testimony not credible. Prosecutors did not appeal. Now, the part that makes this case genuinely unusual. That April, while he was in the police cell, officers at Tsu tried to give him a polygraph examination. They filmed the session themselves, and when the confinement case came to trial, the prosecution submitted that video as evidence that the questioning had been conducted properly. It did the opposite. When he declined the polygraph, officers took hold of both his arms and shook him hard enough to leave a skin abrasion on the inside of his elbow. There was a slap to his inner thigh and a blow to his side while an officer shouted at him to keep his legs still. They told him that staying silent meant he was admitting he was the culprit and that there was no right to silence for things he did not want to talk about. Both statements are false as a matter of Japanese law. They told him he had been arrested for murder and therefore could not refuse questioning. He had not been arrested for murder. He had never been arrested in connection with the disappearance at all. The arrest was for the unrelated confinement allegation. There was a threat built around the existence of a court warrant, that with a warrant they could do whatever they liked to him. The full wording is considerably more graphic than what is being repeated here. And when he asked for his lawyer, he was told that a lawyer had nothing to do with this and that he could hear from him later. In 2001, the Japan Federation of Bar Associations issued a formal warning over that interrogation to the chief of Mie Prefectural Police, the Commissioner General of the National Police Agency, the Prefectural Public Safety Commission, and the chief prosecutor at Tsu. Its findings were not softened. The conduct at Tsu Police Station was an unconstitutional and illegal violation of human rights. On the evidence available at the time, the confinement case should at minimum have been dropped for insufficient suspicion. Because he had been held for 4.5 months after indictment and questioned about the disappearance throughout, the Federation stated that the suspicion could not be dispelled that prosecutors had decided to indict him in order to secure opportunities to interrogate him about a different case. And indicting him while withholding the recording and the ledger, the evidence that cleared him, was contrary to the duty of the prosecution. Here is the context an outside viewer needs. In 1999, Japan had no legal requirement to record interrogations at all. That changed only after a run of wrongful conviction scandals, and the obligation came into force in 2019. But it covers only cases tried by lay judge panels and cases investigated independently by prosecutors. Japanese bar associations estimate that is under 3% of cases that go to trial. Defense lawyers still have no right to be present in the interrogation room. So the misconduct here is on the public record 20 years before recording became even narrowly mandatory. And it is on the record for one reason, because the police chose to film it themselves to prove that they had behaved properly. There is one honest way to sort through what people have proposed about this case. Hold every theory to the same test. This case has exactly one piece of physical evidence, so the test is, does the theory explain the car? For several years, an entirely different explanation took hold. A national newspaper reported that in a bilateral contact, the North Korean side had volunteered her full name, unprompted, and her name was eventually added to the National Police Agency's list of missing people for whom abduction by North Korea cannot be ruled out. That phrase matters. Cannot be ruled out is not a finding, it is the absence of one. And the supporting material came apart. An academic who said he had met a defector who had seen her retracted it as mistaken identity. A journalist put the question directly to the leader of the group of hijackers she had reportedly wanted to interview, who said he had never met her and did not know her name. And when reporters came to the family home chasing a related story, it was her own mother who turned them away and said there was no possibility of abduction. 2 other stories circulated. One was that she had been investigating a small island in the prefecture once notorious for its sex trade. But the people who actually knew her uniformly say she had no interest in that subject. The other was that she had left the country with a man she met at the refugee camp in Thailand. Her passport contains no exit record for the date in question. That one is simply finished. Now apply the test. Not one of those explains a locked car parked crookedly a kilometer from her office, with the seat pushed back and the stereo switched off. The car does explain something. It says a person larger than her sat in her driver's seat, drove her car to that car park, and left it. It says that person smoked. That is what the physical evidence supports, and it is the whole of what it supports. It does not say who, and this is where the case demands more discipline than most. Her parents have never stopped suspecting the man the police focused on. That is their position, honestly held for 27 years, and they are entitled to it. It is not the position of this narration. He was tried and acquitted, and what that videotape proves is what the police did, not what he did. Those are two separate questions, and the tape answers only one of them. And here's what I think the deeper failure in this case is, the one that gets lost underneath the scandal. There are two clocks running. One is the 10 months between her disappearance and the first public appeal. The other is the 4.5 months the investigation spent holding a man in a police cell on a 14-month-old allegation from a different city, an allegation that collapsed in court under the defendant's own photographs. The Bar Association did not say those months were merely wasted. It said the suspicion could not be dispelled that the indictment was made in order to secure interrogation opportunities. Take that seriously, and the shape of the thing becomes clear. An investigation with one narrow window took that window and converted it into a legal argument about something else entirely, and then lost the argument. None of that establishes anyone's innocence or guilt in the disappearance. It establishes something else. This case has two people whose lives were decided by the same institutional failure. One was interrogated illegally and cleared by a court. The other has been missing since 1998 and has never been found. What do you think? When an investigation spends its only window on a collateral charge, is there any realistic sense in which the original case can still be solved? The investigation headquarters at Ise Police Station is still open. In 27 years, it has received 107 pieces of information from the public. None has been decisive. A group formed by her parents and her friends has offered a reward of up to 3 million yen. Last November, her parents stood in a shopping center in Ise with around 40 investigators and members of the community and handed out 2,000 flyers. Beside them was a life-size cardboard cutout of their daughter and a pair of her favorite shoes. Her father, Yasuharu, is 78. What he said was, "If someone who knows would just speak up, I think we would find where she is, in any form at all. I want her found." Her mother, Michio, said something more pointed. She brought up another case, a woman murdered in Nagoya a year after her own daughter vanished, where an arrest was finally made last year, 26 years later. Given that, she said, she wants the police to do absolutely everything they can. She has the arithmetic on her side. In 2010, Japan abolished the statute of limitations for murder. If a crime was committed against Noriko Tsujide, it can still be prosecuted for as long as anyone is alive to prosecute. 27 years on, a locked car in an empty car park is still the only thing in this case that ever told the truth.